So yeah, so what I'm going to do this evening is just introduce the theme. And yeah, we've got this theme, wielding the Diamond Thunderbolt, which I'm hoping that you realize is the Vajra. I hope you're familiar in some way with the symbol of the Vajra, or at least sort of have an idea of what that might reference. And well, it's interesting to look at this. When I've talked to other people about, we're exploring the symbolism of the Vajra this weekend, sometimes people are like, actually, it's not a symbol that we necessarily reflect on very much. And I was thinking, actually, it's part of my name. And I don't really reflect on it that much. I could reflect on it a lot more. So I've really been enjoying sort of imaginatively evoking the symbolism of the Vajra in preparation for this weekend. And I was thinking about why sometimes, it's not necessarily a very comfortable symbol to explore. And I think part of that is, it's got this association with truth and strength and a kind of hard diamond cutting sort of associations. And I think sometimes that's not very comfortable. I know with me, when I was given my name, which is Vajratara, my Trey was very keen to point out that the Vajra comes in service of Tara, which means that she said, power is in the service of compassion and must always be in the service of compassion. Truth must always be in service of compassion. And I think this was a little precept for me personally, who could be quite blunt on occasion. So yeah, so it's not a comfortable symbol because it's pointing to the destructive power of reality itself. And Bhante talks about this. Bhante brings this out in his talk, which I hope you've had an opportunity to listen to. But if you haven't, I really recommend that you do listen to it or read it. I think sometimes actually it's better to listen to these talks because it's in the Tantric Path series. And Bhante's talk about the Vajra in the Tantric Path series, it's more like an evocation. I think all of those talks in the Tantric Path series are evocations, rather than just presenting information. But in his talk on the Vajra in that series, he talks about the shattering quality of the Vajra. And he says that if the Vajra, if reality doesn't shatter your preconceptions, doesn't shatter your kind of awareness of the way things are, if you don't feel, and another place he says, if you don't feel like you're hanging upside down with your fingernails over the void, then you're not really experiencing reality. It's not really reality unless it's sort of shattering, unless it's breaking old views. And while I think that is true, I also think that that's quite easy to misunderstand. It can lead to a rather harsh approach to reality that's something that's kind of come and bonk you over the head and make you wake up in a bit of a harsh way. And it makes you feel like, well, I've got to get it wrong. I've got to get it right because I'm always wrong. So I've got to get rid of these old wrong ideas and I've got to have a right idea about reality. And if it isn't going to shatter me, then I don't understand what I'm talking about. So it can set up a sort of tension where we're expecting some sort of big experience that's going to be quite painful and even undermining in certain ways, and that we've got to kind of push through our old views in a bit of a harsh or inappropriately willful way. But actually, I think the shattering nature of reality can be a lot more subtle than that. And Bhante also talks about the Vajra sword, the sword of wisdom. And he tells this story about how an old master was showing the strength of his blade on his Vajra sword, and he just held out his sword and dropped a piece of silk onto the sword, which then, as soon as it hit the blade, gracefully parted in two. And he said, actually, that's what wisdom is like. Yes, it does break through our old preconceived notions about the way things are, but it does so with a kind of gentleness and ease when Atisha talked about understanding shunyata. He said it's like melting butter into hot soup. I really like that image. He says, actually, if you're really angry all the time, you haven't really understood. He said, if you really see into the nature of the shunyata karanagarbha, the kind of matrix of wisdom and compassion, then it's like melting butter into hot barley soup. So yes, the Vajra is a symbol, and like any symbol, you're not going to really plumb the depths of the symbol in a weekend. I think this weekend's just going to be an invitation to play with the symbol. Let imagination play with this symbol and see what it arrives at. And just to start us off, I'd like us to consider, before we go to bed or before we get up in the day, as Cynthia will be experiencing, that these two kind of paradoxical aspects of the Vajra, which is the Vajra is called the Diamond Thunderbolt. So you've got the Thunderbolt, which is unstoppable and irresistible. And that meets the unbreakable, indestructible diamond. And there's so much in that. There's so much in those two forces, if you like. So we've got the Thunderbolt. I was just reflecting on this today, actually. I realized that there's actually no such thing as a thunderbolt. It's a mixture of thunder and a lightning bolt. Anyway, I don't know where that comes from, if it's only a weird English thing, English language thing. But anyway, we understand it as the Thunderbolt. So that there's a kind of mixture there of sound and light, which has a tremendous energy and power. The power to illuminate, the power to destroy, the power to send a huge electrical charge into the night or into the day, but in this sort of this huge bolt of power, energy, light, and sound. And of course, in the Vajratara, Shantideva talks about that illumination. He says, at night in darkness thick with clouds, a lightning flash gives a moment's brightness. So sometime by the power of the Buddha, the worldly mind might for a moment turn to skillful intentions. So the lightning bolt is compared to an illumination. The illumination of skillful intentions, the illumination of the bodhicitta, the illumination of insight itself, which is fleeting and momentary, but it does change things. It clears away illusions. It sends a particular charge into things. It lights up the world in a different way. And Bhante talks about the lightning flash. It's often compared, these lightning flashes are compared to the insight experiences. And he says, well, yes, even though these insight experiences are momentary, they build up into something. He says these flashes, coming with ever increasing frequency, gradually merge first into a series of more and more sustained emissions of radiance, and then into the unbroken and wholly transcendent illumination of perfect wisdom. So they merge, occasionally you get these flashes of awareness, of deepening perspective, and even wisdom in your practice. And gradually they build up into what he calls the sustained emissions of radiance. It's not just a momentary lighting up. It's a sustained radiance of perfect wisdom. So there's that feeling of the storm where things light up and there's a kind of charge in the atmosphere and we feel alive. That's the other thing, you in the thunderstorm, you feel alive and charged and vivid, and the whole air is potent. There's that kind of feeling of electricity in the atmosphere, and it's potent and alive and creative. Very, very exciting, just on the edge of fear. And of course, that's what insight is like and spiritual practice is like. Just on the edge of the unknown, the mysterious, of forces bigger than ourselves. And then we have the image of the diamond, which again is made out of strong forces of heat and pressure under the earth, deep in the earth, which creates something very, very pure, something that we can see through, that's transparent and clear, but also hard. You know, diamond is one of the hardest substances that we have and cuts through most other substances. So it's pure, it's what we call adamantine. It's also very valuable and bright and shiny, you know, it glitters. I remember my dad, who really doesn't believe in the royalty and has made this point many times over the years. He was going to the theatre one night, and it happened to be that the Queen was going to see that performance as well. And so everyone was kind of held back behind these cords. And she walked, you know, down the red carpet to the entrance of the theatre. And my mum turned around to my dad, and then, you know, expecting him to say, well, why should we wait? What's she ever done? And he had tears pouring down his face. And mum said, why are you crying? And he said, the diamonds, look at those diamonds. He said it was extraordinary. They just reflected all the light around in this kind of blaze, you know. So the diamond's not just a hard, bright thing, it's a glittering thing. It reflects light, it lights up the room. How very, very valuable. So all of this again comes to represent spiritual practice, the purity that comes from spiritual practice, the purity that comes from maintaining our ethical intentions and our intentions to practice the spiritual life, even when under the pressure of great forces. Seeing the value of spiritual practice beyond anything, beyond momentary pleasures, the most precious thing that you have in your life. And sometimes the more pressure that we're under, the more our practice shines, the more resolve we have, because we see that in all the vicissitudes of life, what's really important, what's really essential is Dharma practice. And we must never lose hold of Dharma practice, because the Dharma is true and works in any conditions. And I've really seen this recently with the ordination retreat. So I've been on the team as well, along with Dana Uttar, for 2 ordination retreats that happened in the spring in Tiratanaloka. And, you know, a lot of people have had their plans changed. So there's an ordination retreat going on right this very moment at Adhisthana. And a lot of these people who are getting ordained now were meant to be going on a 3-month retreat last year, or they were meant to be going on a 3-month retreat this year, or a 5-week retreat, all at Akashavana in Spain. And that wasn't able to happen. So for the spring ordination retreats, it kind of got whittled down from a 3-month retreat to a 5-week retreat in Spain. And then it got kind of whittled down to a 3-week retreat at Tiratanaloka. And then it became an online retreat. So the spring ordinations retreats were online, which is probably, you know, the most unfavorable conditions you could have for on the surface of things from ordination. But actually what it did is it meant that people were much more focused on ordination and the significance of ordination and the commitment that they were about to undertake, much more than the retreat. It became much less about the retreat, much more about ordination. And some of the people on these retreats were saying, you know, this would not have been the retreat that I had chosen. I would not choose to have an online ordination retreat. But actually, it's the best retreat it's the best retreat I could have had, because it's made me focus on what's really important. You know, when all those retreat conditions are taken away, when everything changes, then I see what's really important. And what's really important for me is to make this commitment in my life. And I think a lot of people in their own ways, through the pandemic, have really seen, actually, no, it's the Dharma that's important. because there's something unconditioned about the Dharma. There's something even unconditioned about ordination, in the sense that it remains true and vivid and bright, despite conditions, whatever conditions are going on. The Dharma is true. So yes, so there are the qualities of the diamond. Under great forces, what really shines out is Dharma practice and ethical practice, and the purity that comes with ethical practice. And so this is why the Vajra comes to represent this spiritual practice, because spiritual practice unites the energy of the lightning bolt, the sound of the lightning bolt, that vivid quality, that unstoppable quality, that illuminating quality, with purity and brilliance of the diamond. And it's interesting as well, because you've got the lightning bolt and the thunder, and you've also got the diamond. So you're uniting the qualities of the sky and the earth. Thunder and lightning definitely come from the sky, from the heights, and the diamond comes from the depth. Lightning is an active quality, but it changes us. We're transmuted. We are changed. There's this very interesting passage in the Rainbow Road where Bhante is talking about his vision, his spiritual visions, particularly the spiritual visions he had of Amitabha. But before he has the vision of Amitabha, he talks about feeling that he was being changed, and he uses that language, that he was being changed, that spiritual practice changes us. The energy and the unstoppable force that we bring to spiritual practice changes us. It makes us someone different. It changes us into something pure and brilliant and bright. And in a way, all we need to do to let that process happen is to trust conditions, just as the conditions deep within the earth give rise to the diamond. You know, just as conditions in the weather systems give rise to lightning and thunder, so the conditions of spiritual practice give rise to the Vajra. And what we need to do is just turn up. That's what's expected of us, is just put ourselves in good conditions and keep going with practice. And let those conditions, let the condition of the Dharma change us. And we won't know who we're going to be, not entirely, but we've just got to trust that those conditions will give rise to something extraordinary, more extraordinary than we could even ever imagine. That we are Vajras being made in the depths of the earth, and we've been Vajras being made in the sky, in that immense sound and electricity and light. And it's joyful, and it's bright, and it's brilliant, and it's electric, and it's thrilling, and it's dangerous. And it's also precious and clear. It's just like being in a thunderstorm, maybe like being in a thunderstorm with a diamond. Or maybe the diamond is being created by the thunderstorm. However you choose to see it. But it's definitely, you know, that these are the association with the Diamond Thunderbolt, with the Vajra. It's definitely not about hitting ourselves over the head with the Vajra. It's about ourselves being the Vajra, being created by the forces, the joyful forces, the bright forces of spiritual practice. Because we just wanted to say one thing before we have our tea, just for you to think about while you have your tea.
I was just thinking, thank you, Dhamma Megha, for a wonderful talk, and Saraka, my dear friend, too. But she just finished up, didn't she, talking about how lucky and how fortunate we are to have the resources to practice the Dharma. And it was so beautiful hearing you talking about being in this very shrine room with its pale floor, its, what did you call it? The light wood floor or something, and all those, that energy flowing down under the floor, and we're connecting with each other. And it's been so wonderful for me to be here for this time, sharing in these resources and really appreciating the possibility that we have, both as the team here,
Mm.
but also being able at this time of the pandemic to offer this out through Zoom. I mean, how amazing that we've been able to keep our retreats going. And I just so much appreciate that we have been able to do that. And that we somehow or another have managed to stay afloat financially. Just about, haven't we? Just about touched into that. So that's really what we're talking about here. And it gives me a great deal of pleasure to say that many of you have been very generous so far in helping Tiratanaloka to stay afloat. But we do need to keep on thinking, how are we going to manage? How are we going to do this financially? That's our problem, isn't it, really?
Yeah, so we've been, I mean, immediately when the pandemic hit, pretty much immediately we started offering, first of all, study seminars and then retreats online. But and, you know, we'll continue doing that. We're hoping to open soon.
We thought we'd open at the end of July, but of course it's not possible in Wales, is
No.
it? So we've had to quickly change around and plan that 2-week retreat to be online again.
And we may have to do that with others.
Oh, I do hope we don't.
I do hope we don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, such is the situation that we can't be sure. And online retreats don't bring in, to be honest, quite as much money as in-person retreats. So, you know, we're doing really well. We're doing really, really well. And any dana that you give us will be used. We are still operating at a loss, and it depends how big our loss is going to be. We're budgeting around, it could be around £6,000 loss. It could be around £30,000 loss this year if we don't open. So anyway, you know, you've given very, very generously. This is a dana event this weekend, and a lot of you have given very generously. And if you want to give us any more, that would be fantastic. Either as setting up a regular standing order so that we know how much we can budget for, and or just giving a one-off donation for this weekend.
It's quite easy to do that, just to say all you need to do is to look at the Tiratanaloka web page, and right at the very top on the front page there's a place which tells you you can click here.
Yes.
And that takes you through to the Just Giving page, but Vajratara set that up for us, so it's easy to do. And I just think it's so very, very worthwhile, because it's not only us here who are benefiting. You know, we are able to offer the Dharma to all those generations of people to come, if we can kind of get through this awkward, difficult time right now.
Yeah. And yeah, so we've got, you'll see in the chat, I've put the link to our Just Giving page. So if you could give us any more donations for the weekend, that will be fantastic. And it will just enable us to keep giving, and, you know, giving into the future and giving people the best conditions they can possibly have to practice the Dharma. So maybe
that's enough.
Maybe that's enough.
Over to you.
The Vajra is energy. Money is energy.
Yes.
Giving is wielding the Vajra.
And that is love in itself.
And that is love in itself. So yes, money is a very, very good way to wield the Vajra. Amala Vajra will be proud of me for making that association.
Yeah, well, thank you, Vajratara.
Yes. Vajra in service of love. Yes, we should definitely have a cup of tea.